All right, today let's learn all about changing chords, or what we call transitioning. So if you're like 100% of all the players that learn how to play guitar, you'll find that once you get a chord that you like and you feel stable on it, you really don't want to move from the one chord to another chord because you find that it takes too long to set up that new chord. So if you've attempted a song already, you probably have noticed this if you're a new player. And that's because everybody goes through this. You'll hear me say that a lot because I really want you to understand that it's not you, it's that you're learning something new and that these techniques are difficult and they do take time to learn. Okay? So, but specifically, when we're talking about transitioning chords, there's some real specific things that we can do that will massively quicken our learning process. And that's what it's all about, right? We want to get to our goals of being a great player, and we'd love to do it as quickly as possible. Again, still enjoying the process, right? We want to do that, but it would be nice if we could move quicker as well. So let's talk about that. So number one, when we're moving from one chord to another, it's important to take some inventory of what's going on. So remember we said, like, if we go from a C chord to an A minor chord, a beginner mistake is when people play a C chord and they play their A minor, what they do is they lift their fingers up and they recalibrate every single time. Well, it may not seem like a big deal, but if you think about it, we've got 3 fingers that we need to lay down doing that every single time, 3 fingers. So if we're moving from one chord to another, that's 6 potential places where we could mess up. If we're moving from a C chord to an A minor chord, back and forth, and we only move 1 finger, there's only 2 places we could mess up. So that cuts our margin of error in a third. Huge. Okay? So you're going to observe this sort of thing as you're going along more and more, and it's going to make you a better player, a faster player, a more efficient player. Okay, so first thing is you're going to observe is what notes are similar. Are there any notes that are similar? If you're going from a D chord to a C chord, there's really no notes that are similar, you know. You might be able to say, well, I know that in one way you could say that 2 and 3 is going to bump up 1, 2, 3 strings, right? And then the first finger will go down right here. So you can say, here's our D. I'm going to lift my first finger and go 1, 2, 3, and then put the first finger down. So you can use association to help you with that, but some chords are going to be a lot easier to do this with than others. So for instance, the A minor and the C, okay? I've never really thought about the D and the C looking like each other, but I guess we could stretch a little bit and say that guy bumped down and put that first finger there. Or if we were going from, say, like the G to the B7, we've got a similarity there, right? Or if we're going from the G to the D. If you notice, here's a G chord, and a D chord looks like that. Well, we could keep this finger anchored, which is the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. It's our 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. Then we could technically transition back and forth between these two without ever having to lift that 3rd finger up. Now what most people will do is they'll lift their fingers up, they'll try to put them down, they'll lift them up every single time because it's easier right now. And they'll say, my finger doesn't move independently like that. Yes, it does. I promise you it does. You just have to think different things. Like I'll think, when I just started doing this, I remember many, many years ago, I would say, you're glued down or you're tacked down. I would like imagine like a tack going right through my finger, sticking it to the fretboard. And then that reminded me, don't lift that finger up. And then I would make these movements real slowly. And the finger would come up, it'd fly off. And I'd be like, dang it, I'd do it again. Kind of do it that time. And then the next time, a little bit more and a little bit more. And then eventually, it's just not even a thing. I mean, that 3rd finger just stays down there, just automatically, okay? So when you're transitioning between these chords, at first, what I want you to do is I want you to just worry about the left hand. Don't be concerned, or I should say the fretting hand if you're a lefty. Okay, if you're a righty, we're still the fretting hand, okay? So let's talk, the fretting hand is the only thing I want you to worry about. So if you're going back and forth between 2 chords only, okay, when you're transitioning, just go back and forth between 2 chords only. If you think about a computer and giving it too much to think about, they get slowed. They slow down, right? You don't want to do that. You just want the minimum amount of information that you can work with, or the maximum amount is two chords here, really, and we don't want to go beyond that. And then what I want you to do is I want you to observe what notes are similar, what notes are the same. It's easy to do by just looking. If you see that G chord and that D and you see that finger didn't really need to move, then you've observed that, and then practice that. And then what I want you to do is take your picking hand, put it on your lap or put it on the strings, whatever. If you put them on the strings, you'll actually press the strings down a little bit more, making it easier to play these chords. And then what I want you to do is I want you to slowly build your chord and then go back and forth between those 2 chords. Okay, just 2 chords only. And do that for some time. How long? Could be a minute, could be 5 minutes, could be an hour. It's really up to you. The more you do it, the better you're going to become. But the point here is that we just want to make sure it starts really marinating with us, and we really get this concept down, okay? So you're going to go back and forth between these 2, and notice when I'm building the chord, I'm building it typically from the lowest note, that means lowest in pitch, on up. So the reason that we do that is when we're strumming the guitar, we strum from the lowest note to the highest note, or when we're finger picking, we usually do something like that. We almost always hit the bass note. 99% of the time we hit the bass note first, or together with another note. To introduce the chord, when we hear that bass note, it introduces the chord very nicely. So if we build the chord from the lowest notes to the highest notes, that's a good protocol or a good habit to get into that will make sure that you're playing your chords correctly. I can't tell you how many times I've been in the studio or playing live where maybe there was a chord or 2 that I had difficulty with, but because I built it the way that I did from the lowest note up, what would happen is, if I was finger picking especially, as long as I could hit that low note to introduce the chord, I could go ahead and finger pick it or just use a pick, hit that first 1 or 2 notes, and then by the time I'm going to hit the other notes, I've got time to do that actually, because I've introduced the first few notes. So for instance, if I'm going from a G chord to a D chord, so you can see what I'm doing there is I'm actually forming the chord, and then before I actually pick the note, I finally get that finger on there. But it's happening not all at once. So don't worry about getting all your fingers down at once. Do them nice and systematically. This idea of getting all your fingers down on the chord at once is something that will happen. Okay, you're still probably going to put down one finger before another, but it's happening in such a short space that it seems like it's all at once. Like a drummer taking 2 drumsticks and hitting them on the drum head at once. You might perceive it as happening at the same time, but if we were to take a super high-speed camera, you're going to see that one stick hits a fraction of a second before the other. So you're always going to be doing something similar to here. So build the chords from the low notes up. Their takeaway from this, my friends, is to take 2 chords and 2 chords only at a time. Now you can take all the chords, the 9 essential chords, or any chords that you want to use, and do this with it. But take 2 chords only at a time and transition back and forth. In this case here, I'm going between the G and the D. Okay, that's what I mean by transitioning between 2 chords only, or the C and the A minor. I'm not introducing any other chords. I'm just getting used to that. Reason being is it's really going to sink in more when you do this instead of bringing in a bunch of chords. Okay, and then finally, when you do get it to where it feels right and you're able to do it fairly accurately, less speed and more accuracy is what we're looking for here, then pick them. Make sure that the notes are actually sounding, okay? All right, my friends, you know what to do here. Take your time with it. Anytime you're experiencing these new chords, it's a good thing to do, especially in the beginning. And in time, you're going to get better and better at this. It's just not even going to be a thing, okay? I promise that day is very, very close. Let's keep going.